Hello, everybody. It's Donna Cravata, and we're back again with another Real 50 over 50 interview. I think this is the 113th interview. And today we have Liane Moccia. She is a registered herbalist specializing in fertility and preconception planning, and she helps create a path to a happy, healthy pregnancy with herbs, nutrition, lifestyle changes, and a clear plan. Leanne's own infertility diagnosis led her to the healing power of plants and ultimately a change in her career to help others on similar journeys. Prior to this, she spent 20 years in corporate marketing, and whether in your first year of trying, in the middle of an IVF cycle, or somewhere in between, there's a way to do this where you don't have to do it alone, and you can have a clear, holistic plan and take the pressure off and not hack your own fertility. Liane is also in the process of finishing up her first book, which will launch in the fall, the Herbal Fertility Handbook. And I know that this will help so many people along their often very difficult and challenging path to pregnancy. So welcome, Liane. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And let's just dive right in. Like, what happened? How did you go from marketing to
Yes. Yes.
fertility?
Yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of people who make these career changes, mid-career or later in your career, it comes from your personal experiences. So I was, in a marketing role for a big healthcare company, working, traveling, doing all the things. I was young and healthy in my early 30s, and I really didn't expect to have issues building my family. And when I did, I felt very ill-equipped to handle it. I didn't feel like there were a lot of resources. I didn't feel like I was getting a lot of help other than, take a prenatal and keep trying. Eventually went down the path of fertility clinics and IVF, which I'm very thankful and grateful for. But at the same time, it was a little bit of just, plugging into the system and following, the process. There wasn't a lot of explanations of how can I make this journey feel a little bit better for me? What can I do to improve my chances? What can I do to have the emotional support that I might need throughout this? Ultimately, my story had a happy ending, and I had twin daughters who are now 16 and a half years old. So I'm way on the other side of it. But the whole experience made me start looking for other ways to support myself naturally. So that led me to herbal medicine. And once I kind of dipped my toe in what herbs can do to support our bodies, I was completely hooked and started doing a lot of home things like, oh, how can I support my immune system? Or I have a cold right now. What can I do to feel better? And the more I kind of tumbled down that rabbit hole, the more I realized that this was a world I wanted to be immersed in. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to do more. So when my daughters got, past that toddler stage and I felt like I was coming up for air and I had some time, I decided to go back to school. And I went back and I studied herbal medicine and I became a certified herbalist. And then eventually over time, I went through the American Herbalist Guild to get my professional, become a registered herbalist with the AHG, and then did some more training with a functional medicine doctor who specializes in fertility to specialize myself in what brought me to this, which is fertility and preconception support.
And you had no medical background at all other than marketing for a healthcare agency prior to this?
I mean, I had always been interested in the sciences. So my undergraduate degree was in communication and journalism, but right out of college, I started working in a hospital and did some training and was working in the pediatric cardiology ultrasound department and became certified and registered to do pediatric ultrasounds. So, and then that was what led me into healthcare marketing because I had a clinical background in it. So I've always sort of been in that science world, working for a big healthcare company. I had a lot of training and thought around regulatory and what's been scientifically tested and validated, and what can you say about things, being really conscious and ethical about making claims. And I think that's really carried through in the work that I do today, and making sure that while herbal medicine can be very safe and effective, it is important to be really ethical about what you're saying herbs can do, and making sure that there's some evidence or research to back it up, not having these broad claims, really walking that line between the blend of conventional medicine, which can be, is a wonderful option for many of us, but also at the same time having this space to go a little bit deeper and say, there are things that you can do and ways that you can support your body that are going to help support your ultimate goals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's finding that balance between the East and the West and
Yeah.
the scientific evidence and the traditional wisdom.
Yes.
So, like, can you talk a little bit more about how you do that? And I totally respect, like, the way that you approach it because, you know, you don't want it to be perceived as snake oil
Yeah.
or,
Yeah. I mean,
you
I
know.
think it starts with my absolute sort of grounding and respect for Western medicine. I think, the doctors have gone through a lot of training and they are experts in what they do. And I think that it also stems to know from knowing that we can't all know everything. And I like to stay in my lane of understanding that there are a lot of herbs and supplements and lifestyle changes like managing our stress responses and movement and all of those things that just make us healthier people. And I don't think we can really argue with that at this point. There's enough evidence to support that. So I sort of come at it from those two sides. How do we take the best of both worlds? How do we look at all of the options that are available to us through the things I mentioned, like herbs and supplements and lifestyle, and what's been studied, what's showing to be effective. I'm very comfortable with looking through and digging through the research and the scientific data because I did a lot of it throughout most of my career. So I love, getting into PubMed and seeing what some of the latest results look like, and also being able to know and look at, just because a paper has been published doesn't mean it's good a good study, right? You have to have that discerning eye to say this study was maybe not conducted with the most rigorous of techniques and our applications, and it may have been industry sponsored, or so having that kind of discerning eye, I think, can be helpful as well.
Yeah, and, I imagine that most of the clients and patients that you work with, they're really hinging on hope, so you
Mhm.
also need to kind of be that discerning voice,
Yeah. Yeah. I
and
I think one of the things I think I see with people on this fertility journey is that they just feel overwhelmed and a little bit lost.
mhm,
You can't scroll on any social media app right now for more than a couple minutes if you're in that age range without being bombarded with, the latest fertility hacks and here's what worked for me. And there's a lot of influencers out there that may or may not have the education to back up what they're saying. And I think it's really overwhelming. And one of the things I always tell people when we work together is that no one can promise you an outcome.
no,
No one. But what I can promise is that I will help you through this journey so that you feel like you are doing everything possible to support yourself, both emotionally and physically, and that you won't have to wonder if you're doing everything possible, and you won't have to dig through all of this sometimes conflicting, sometimes dangerous information on your own. And
yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing I see with the people I work with, is that having a clear plan can
mhm.
really take so much stress off of someone when they're in this fertility journey.
Yeah, I mean, I had friends, this was many, many years ago, I think their daughter is, like, in her 30s now, but they did very early stage IVF, and it was really an emotional experience, and it was hard and expensive and scary, and, they ended up adopting,
Mhm.
but it really it impacted their lives in so many ways,
Yeah.
as the hormones just change you,
Oh,
um,
yes.
and back then, there was not a lot of research of what happens.
And not a lot of people talking about it. I
Yeah,
think that's one thing, I think, where we are in a better place now than we may have been 10, 15, 20 years ago, is that, people are talking a lot more about infertility.
yeah,
The numbers are increasing for both, fertility, whether it's egg related or sperm related. And I think there's also a lot more support out there. There's a lot of great organizations doing things to raise public awareness and offer support groups. So I think in that sense, people can feel less alone
Mhm.
than they did in the past.
Yeah, and medical insurance covers a lot of it now, right?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of it, and depends on the state you're in, and there's a lot of organizations that are doing great work to help continue to um, push for
Mhm.
access to health insurance to cover this.
Now what do you see, like, years down the road after people, have their children? Like, how, like, does their aging women's bodies change? Um, the whole experience of aging, does that change from going through, fertility treatments or
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really big question that could be a whole topic in and of itself. I
Mm,
think it depends on a lot of factors. So if somebody was facing fertility struggles because of something that might have been going on with their hormones in their 30s that they didn't know,
mhm,
or even if they did know, so something like PCOS or endometriosis or an undiagnosed thyroid problem. There's so many things that could affect fertility that sometimes take a while to uncover.
mhm,
Somebody who, let's take PCOS for example, that is something that you realize in your childbearing years when you want to become pregnant, it's getting in the way, it's an obstacle, and you might find ways to work through it and overcome your fertility struggles with PCOS. But the underlying problem of PCOS doesn't go away. And as you age, now you're at higher risk for metabolic issues and diabetes and heart disease and all these other things that need to be looked at. They need to be watched. They need to be managed. There are, of course, lifestyle things you can do to help move towards health in that condition. So I do see down the road, people who, if there were underlying conditions that aren't really worked on or dealt with, they are going to resurface. Especially during menopause transition. They talk about menopause being similar to a hormonal shift, similar to that of adolescence.
mhm,
And fertility is often hormonally related. So yeah, there's definitely a continuum there. So that's why I love thinking about holistic health and herbal medicine, because you're moving yourself closer to optimal health, and that's going to be beneficial to you throughout all the different stages of your life.
mhm. Yeah, and support the hormone changes that are yet
Mhm.
to come.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing. Do you talk about that much in
I
your
do, I do. I have a small part of my practice that continues to work with people along the continuum. So I have
Mhm,
adolescents who are dealing with painful periods. I have people in perimenopause that are saying, what the heck is going on with my body and why do I feel this way? And herbs can be gentle and supportive. And I've done some classes on the topic. It's where I am with my age, so I have
mhm,
a lot of personal experience with it. Yeah, and I've just found herbs and diet and lifestyle to be really, really important and supportive um, during the perimenopause and menopause transition.
mhm. So now I'm guessing that sleep has a lot to do with this too.
Oh my goodness. It's like you were reading my mind. So sleep has been on my mind a lot lately. Studies are coming out regularly. I just saw a really interesting study saying that ovarian reserve, which is how many eggs you have in your ovaries, is decreased in people who report having poor sleep parameters. So again, there's this very tight tie with fertility. There's studies that look at our fertility hormones and show that when we're not sleeping well, our fertility hormones are affected. And then we take that over into the perimenopause and menopause years, and sleep is just a huge part of that. It's a huge part of us feeling better and being able to kind of get through some of the emotional shifts that you're going to feel during that time. Our neurotransmitters are reacting to changes in hormones, and that doesn't feel good. It can create a lot of stress and anxiety, and sleep is one of the best solutions we have to helping us feel better. It can be a bit of a catch-22 because often your hormonal shifts or hot flashes and night sweats make it harder
Mhm,
to sleep. But doing what you can to prioritize sleep, and herbs can be very helpful here. They can make a big difference in how you feel during this time period.
Yeah, and if you've been working towards this for 10 or 15 years
Yeah.
prior to when these symptoms hit, you're probably in a better place physically to, um,
Yes.
for your body to react differently.
Yes, absolutely.
But, people weren't talking about this, were they?
Yeah, it's a very hot topic right now, and I think
It
it
is.
it
I think
deserves
it's amazing.
the space yeah, it deserves the space it's getting, and again, it's another example of us being in a bit of a better place than we might have been 15 or 20 years ago, and it just really wasn't being talked about, and the research hadn't wasn't where we are today with
Mhm.
newer studies, helping pointing us in directions, that of solutions and options that we have.
Yeah. Like, as I was preparing for this interview, the thing that kept jumping out at me is the levels of communication. Like,
Mhm.
there's communication with yourself, there's communication with your partner, there's communication with your external family, friend system, and then there's, just outright communication, and, like, how can you, I don't know, advise people on how important that piece is?
Yeah,
Because if you're not talking about it, if you're not able to share what's going on in your own body, because we all know our own bodies better than other people know them. And I've, like, after having a health issue, I realized that if I couldn't communicate how I was feeling, I was probably getting 50% less of the treatment or the advice or the healthcare that I could receive because, they could only see so much in
right.
appointments that you have with doctors or professionals like yourself. So, like, how can you advise on what to communicate, how to communicate, um,
Yeah.
how to get over not wanting to talk about it? Because I'm sure there's a lot of that too.
Right, right. Yeah, some of us weren't raised to be talking so openly about our bodies and what's happening to it and what we're experiencing. We're sort of taught to like, have this professional front and look like we have it all together. I think one of the things I find really helpful, especially I mean, as it relates to fertility, there are a lot of great support groups out there
Mhm.
where All Paths is an organization that I'm involved with as a volunteer, and they have meetings almost every day of the week that have different topics and different focuses. And I feel like everybody could find a place that they might feel comfortable. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's just taking that first step to say, I've really never talked about this outwardly, and I don't know how to. I'm just going to join let me just show up. And the groups are virtual. So there's really low barrier to entry. You can speak, comfortable in your own home. And if it gets really overwhelming, you can always, leave. But, I think those groups have helped open up the communication. And what I find when I'm leading one of these groups is I will see people start to share and bounce ideas off of each other. And have you thought about this? And have you tried? And they all start collaborating and sharing. And it's a wonderful thing to see. And I'm seeing this across the spectrum. So even like my own personal um, doctor, I was in the office the other day talking to her, and she talked about how, she has an expertise and specialty in menopause. And she said, oh, I'm thinking about doing support groups for women. Do you think people would be comfortable talking about this? I said, oh my gosh, yes. I would love to see that for this group. I think people are looking forward to sharing and communicating and supporting each other. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's one way to start opening up is testing some of these groups and seeing how it feels.
And what about having that conversation with yourself? Because that's where it's gotta start.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's hard. I think it depends on your sort of style and your personality. For me, I'm someone who's very literal, and I find for myself, I do best when I'm dealing with something new by learning. So I want to read the next book. I want to read what's online. What are some of the studies? And that helps me to help shape my own self-talk, right? So as you start reading books and reading how other experts are approaching this, it starts informing the way you think about your own body and how you talk to yourself, which can be really helpful. I think being isolated and in your own mind all the time can be a hard thing. So that's how I look outward is through reading and consuming information.
All right. And you just teed yourself up beautifully to talk about your book. Let's talk about your book.
Yeah,
Is this everything you wish you knew?
it is. And that was a big driver in why I wrote the book. It's called the Herbal Fertility Handbook, Natural Strategies to Increase Your Chances of Getting Pregnant. And it was after about 7 years of my clinical private practice, I realized that there were so many things that were common. While everybody's unique and everybody's different, there were so many things that I felt were coming up as themes. And it is all the things that I wish I knew and had when I went through this, 17 something years ago. And it's a way for me to get that information out in a much, in a much broader way. I really enjoyed the writing process. I'm incredibly proud of how the book has come together. We're at the point now where we just approved the cover design. I actually just posted on
I saw it.
moments before.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
so
gorgeous. It's
it's
gorgeous.
on my Instagram if anybody wants to see it. I'm really excited with the cover design. And we've also just gotten back the endorsements, or what's called blurbs,
Mhm.
from about 10 to 12 experts in the field, which was incredibly humbling to put it out there to people that you've read I've read their books, or I follow them and I look up to them, and to ask for an advanced read and a blurb was humbling, and to see them come back has just been one of the most
Yeah,
incredible experiences of writing this book so far.
yeah. Writing a book like that, that is, so much a part of the fabric of what you do and who you are, is the biggest form of self-growth that there is.
Right,
It
right.
really is. It's amazing. I can't wait to hold it in my hands.
Yeah, I'm excited. It comes out. It will be. It launches on September 23rd of
Mhm.
this year, 2025. So we'll be talking about it a lot over the summer and leading up to the launch.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So from the book, what is the one thing that you really want people to take away?
Hmm.
Like
That's
the
a,
thing,
that's
the
a good
thing.
question. I I would say the one thing is that small changes can have a big impact in your overall health and fertility. And that is the lens at which I approach the book, which is, I know this is a hard and complicated subject for a lot of people, but there really are small, simple things with shifts in your diet, shifts in your movement, bringing in certain herbs. I call them herbs for everyone because they are really herbs that are gentle and safe and shown to be effective for many people. And that by incorporating these things into your life slowly with a clear plan, you really can shift yourself towards health and fertility. And the thing that was really fun about writing the book is it's separated out by chapters, and
Mhm.
there's chapters that talk about managing your stress, um, reducing our exposure to environmental chemicals that have been linked to fertility issues, movement, nutrition. And when I've been reading through the book, I'm realizing that while I'm approaching this through the lens of improving your fertility, it really is applicable to all of us. I
Yeah.
mean, even as writing my own book, I'm like, that's really great advice. Why don't I do that in my own life? And then, I've sort of remembered some of these strategies that I'm talking about with my clients every day and incorporating them in my own life. We
Mhm.
talked about sleep. Sleep is a problem for probably 70% of the people that I work with. And they don't come to me because of sleep issues. They come to
Yeah.
me for other reasons. And then we uncover this foundational um, issue with sleep. So there's a whole chapter on sleep with herbs and strategies, which is going to be beneficial for all of us, which
Yeah.
I think is exciting about the book. And that is what surprised me. I didn't think when I set out to write a book about fertility, it would be so relevant to many other stages in our life.
Well, it sounds like a lot of it is just common sense, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And when you create your body to, you encourage it to operate the way it's supposed to operate, it's
Right.
probably less inclined to take on the dis-ease that
Yes.
is so prevalent these days.
Yes. Yes. I hope when people read the book, they walk away feeling empowered and feeling like there there is no magic bullet for our overall health and fertility. It is all about shifting ourselves closer to health and kind of getting back to what nourishes and supports all of us.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I was speaking with a friend this morning, and she had over the last, like, year and a half or so, she's lost about 70 pounds without really trying, but she just, she improved some of her habits and her lifestyle changes, and now she said she just keeps losing weight because her body is working, her metabolism is working,
Right,
and, she said she's at the weight she was at 30 years ago.
right, right. And I bet she feels really healthy and good in her body. Yeah.
She does, she does, yeah. So, it was really nice to hear her saying that today. And, so in the book, well, I don't know, I guess maybe this is in the book, but maybe not. But, like, after somebody goes through this and they start to incorporate these practices into their lives and adopt herbs and, just different lifestyle changes, they get, let's say they, get pregnant successfully, they have a child. Like, does this carry on into their parenting and how they raise their child?
I think it does. I've had a lot of clients I've worked with where we've brought in certain herbal strategies to help support them in their fertility. And they've said, I loved this tea or this tincture really helped support my sleep and then they will continue. And I often work with people through their pregnancy to
Mhm,
support them. And, we'll go through a list like, okay, well, what is safe for me to continue in pregnancy? Because I really loved this,
mhm,
whole strategy. Is it still safe? And we adjust, and some are, some aren't. And yes, it does at a very practical level. There are things
mhm,
that people start incorporating and they say, I've enjoyed this and I want to continue. But at a more, macro level, it's that shift in mindset that says, how do I slow down? How do I listen to my body? How do
mhm,
I move my body? How do I nourish my body?
mhm.
And that's a framework, I think, that once you've understood and integrated that, that stays with you. And that does stay with how you, think about feeding your child and living your life and your partner and everybody in the household, really.
Yeah, and I guess, coming out the other side of this with something as tangible as a human being really does give you the evidence that this works.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get more tangible than that, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Oh, wow. So we're almost at 30 minutes. I like to wrap these up with a wisdom bomb. Is there something that you can share with people, something small, actionable that they could take with them and kind of bring into their world?
Yeah, as well, I think I would say, something that I've learned, and this kind of comes back to, the name of of this episode, right? 50 over 50. I think it's something I learned as I moved into my 50s, which is our bodies aren't broken and we don't need to be fixed. And I thought as this very, energetic and eager new practitioner when I started my herbal practice, almost 8 years ago, I was going to impart all of this knowledge and help fix and heal and help. And that's not what it is about because we're not broken. And I think if we can remember that
Mhm.
it's about sort of leaning into your healthiest self, doing things to help support your body, but your body inherently knows how to be healthy. And it's a combination of doing the work to, see your doctor, get the diagnosis, figure out what you might need, and then also listening to your body and supporting it holistically and helping to move yourself closer to your most optimal health. So I think that is really what I want people to walk away from, not this fear-based grasping of, how do I hack my fertility or hack my health or what's wrong with me or what can I do? It's about knowing, trusting that your body can do this with the right support and resources.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing all this because I know that the work that you're doing is changing generations, not just lives.
Thank
And
you.
I really look forward to your book coming out and seeing it in lots of hands. And please connect with Leanne. Her website is right here. This replay will be up. We'll keep sharing it. If you need to if you know anybody that needs this, please share it with them. If you have comments and questions, just tag them and we will come back and keep the conversation going. But it's a really important topic, even if you're not in your childbearing years. There are a lot of things that can be done to live a healthier and more full life.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Donna. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, and we will be back again with more. Keep coming back on Wednesdays. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.